right, we're getting straight to it. You came here because you want to know how to stay afloat as a single and unemployed mom. So I did it. Let's talk about it. Of course, there's always a better situation and there's always a situation that's worse. But maybe this can help somehow. I did use my credit card for necessities, and honestly, I just told myself I'll worry about the rest later. Because sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And I have a pretty good credit, so my limit wasn't too much of an issue. I applied for government assistance, like EBT, WIC, and cash assistance. So for this, when I did it, you had to cooperate with child support, which is not what most people think it is. And I might explain my specific situation later on for further understanding, or I might not. But basically, at that moment, you literally had to like give them some type of information in order to receive the government assistance. But again, that doesn't guarantee that they would be paying child support. So not gonna go too much into detail about that. So I utilized as many resources I knew about in my city. Whether it was free clothes, if it was debt support programs, free baby items, free diapers, which I rotated because I do have my preferences when it comes to diapers. And then also I utilized programs that offered incentives at times, like Mommy's in the D or BIMFA. And those are just two programs that I know in my city that helped me out, even if it was like just something small. I didn't spend money on things that I wanted. I used everything I already had, whether it was soap or hair products. And I was always a pretty big saver, and part of that was really not buying things I wanted because my plan for years was to invest more in myself when I got into my career, which I hadn't started yet because I was fresh out of college when I had my son. And I have no regrets, and honestly, I feel like I looked good if I just put on some decent clothes and did my hair. So I was okay. I applied for research studies, and 2020 panel, they were purchased by somebody different. So the company isn't what it used to be, and I was using 2020 panel when I was an undergrad. So 2020 panel was a pretty good research study site, and ever since it got bought, it's been downhill since, in my opinion. So I would look up universities in the area, and if they had paid research studies, so I would get $25, $50, $100 sometimes just for doing a virtual panel, giving my opinion for an hour, or going or driving in person. And I mean, I was unemployed. Even with that, to me, it was worth driving to get $50 or $25. Even if it was, you know, opportunity cost. You do have to think about that. I tracked my spending, and I somewhat budgeted, even though I didn't have consistent income. It was really hard for me to budget. Well, that was hard for me because I literally just didn't know what the month was going to look like. Stay on top of my goals, both short-term and long-term. So I have ideas for multiple streams of income and just things I want to do for my community, but some things take time. I continued on my goals, even knowing that I may not benefit for years from the seed that I planted. And speaking of that, there's a little sneak peek. I have something so simple that I've been working on since my son was like 3 months, and it's not a super big thing, and it really didn't take 2 years to do, but I've been working on it little by little. It's almost done, so stay the course with me, y'all, and y'all will find out what it is, and I hope it helps out some mamas out there when it comes out. Shout out to Tiff for that cup. I prioritize some bills such as life and health insurance, and I cut off unnecessary expenses like subscriptions. And speaking of prioritizing some bills, that also included, which really ties into the budget as a whole, but I deferred my school loans, so I didn't have to pay those, which I'm still trying to learn those things about school loans and the differences and all of that. Move if you have to. So of course, if you move, make sure it's still safe for you mentally and physically, but be real with yourself on what you can or can't handle and weigh your options. I moved back in with my mom, so that did save me plenty of coins. Bottle returns. Now, I really did that just one time, but it could be helpful. Yeah, it's really chump change, you know. But like I said, every little bit was helping, coming from nothing, not having any income. So that was helpful, but it was rare because I didn't buy a lot of drinks to really have bottles to return. And when I say bottle returns, I'm not saying I was going around asking people for bottles or digging in trash cans. I was not doing that. I didn't feel like I was at that place where I needed to do that. But I live with my mom and my brother. So, you know, whatever they had, I was put it in a little baggie, rinse it out, put it in the baggie. I did look for jobs with my aunt, who is a photographer, and she's actually the person who put me onto photography when I was 12, 13. So I did talk to her a few times about getting some jobs where I could help assist her. It wasn't as easy because I always have to figure out babysitting arrangements. Like, depending on what time it was, got to figure out babysitting arrangements. I mean, my son wasn't in daycare the whole time, the whole first year. Babysitting just wasn't all that. And then depending on support, depending on babysitter, you may or may not have to pay. So that's what I did. So depending on what skills you may have, you could possibly partner with other people, or you could work on putting yourself out there to do those things. If it's something you can do digitally, that's awesome, because you don't need to really figure out a babysitter, depending on what you're doing. Look for childcare before you need it. Really, like, even if you think that you're going to be, and trust me, I know, okay? Even if you think you're going to be married, happily ever after, look for that free childcare. Look for it before you think you need it. Even if you think you're going to be a stay-at-home mom, just sign up. You can always decline later on, but just sign up and apply for jobs you think you may not qualify for. Because you never know. You never know. Of course, like, look for resources with resumes and tighten that up. But the overall point is look for childcare before you need it and apply for jobs before you may not qualify for it. Something I did is I looked for free childcare before I needed it. I applied for DHS along with the EBT, of course. So I applied for all of that around the same time. With that, I was looking for childcare. Even if I felt like, when I first had my son, I didn't necessarily think I would be using it, because I did expect that I would be in a different situation, you know, the whole happily ever after thing. So I didn't think I needed it, or I was hoping I wouldn't need it, but I still applied. And it worked out because I needed it. So I'm telling you to look for childcare before you need it and apply for jobs you think you may not qualify for. I applied for jobs for a while. I didn't really want to settle too well, so I applied for jobs that was in my scope. Also, I got to a point where I was applying for jobs I really didn't want to do. Now, some things, income, some jobs may not be worth it. I will say there is a job I did decline when my son was 6 months, because, like, truth be told, it wasn't, all I'm gonna say is opportunity cost, or whatever it's called when you have to outweigh different things. It wasn't, no. I was going to do my personal story with numbers broken down and how I managed it, but I feel like that's too much for this video right now. So I'll keep it general. Of course, we lie in the bed of the choices we make, and I wasn't in a situation to be a stay-at-home mom, so here's my story. My school, I was working part-time at my school, full-time student. And I was an intern working in the area of those who battered and abused, which taught me so much, by the way. So I moved back home with my mom when my lease was up off campus. And I was about 5 months pregnant at the time. And I did get a refund check on purpose from my loans as protection money. And to help me for moving in with my child's father, which didn't happen because I chose not to move due to my own standards I set in place prior to my pregnancy. So I moved back in with my mom, like I said, which we did have an agreement. I definitely asked for permission to move back. Like, it was a whole conversation, you know, about baby, pregnancy, expectations of me, and whatnot. Okay. Now, my expenses varied from phone bill, rent support, to my car insurance, gas, which actually increased a lot more compared to when I didn't have a baby. Medical bills, which, praise the Lord, Medicaid backdated to birth because I had to handle that one alone. So, for the first year, I would say we were blessed and had a lot of items from the shower and things people gave me. So it wasn't a lot of expenses going towards baby items that first year. I always cared about getting the necessities first. So if anybody asked and I feel like I already got the necessities, I would then send them things that were more wants. So I didn't get I didn't get cash assistance from the state until July. And so that was because I couldn't attend the sessions because I visited my partner at the time for a couple months. So him and his family could spend time with our son, and me thinking I would have more help. So financially, just being real, that was a loss for me due to me not getting the cash assistance. And I did get some help by me asking my ex to help with some of my bills. So he would send me 30 here, 50 there. I still was using my EBT because I was still getting it. So I would contribute that way by using my EBT. I just feel like, why not? Once I got back home, I signed up for cash again, which was $400 a month. And I did end up signing up for a training class, which would help towards some of the expenses that it took to complete the training. So then, a little bit after that, me and my partner broke up. So in August, he did send me $250. Due to him saying, like, this is the way I'm supporting. I'm sending you $250 a month. Now after that, it wasn't $250. He did change that, and I didn't get into that. So after that, it would be up to $150. So that would vary based on him needing to get gifts around holidays for people, or if I would send links to him that I needed, and it was before he was going to send me the money, then he'll just like subtract or whatever, which I didn't trip about because I was making it work, and I was not going to argue about broken promises. Not doing that. Then my son got into a government program, so then he started daycare. All right. So then I got 2 contract jobs. So they weren't full time. They were like, when I say contract jobs, they were a couple hours a week. A couple hours a week. But it was some extra income. It was some support. All right. And then boom. By January, I was working a full-time job with benefits that was mostly beneficial to my son's schedule. And then I moved out into a fixer-upper in May. So at this current moment, I still do have a week, but I don't have EBT, and of course, no cash assistance. And so I think that sums it up. And if you have any questions about that or something I missed, please respectfully ask, because I tried to sum up like my story and the way finances looked without going into too much. Even before the breakup, I I still sometimes be like, oh, I need this. And I always wanted us to save money whether we was together or not together. So regardless, I was always looking for like the cheapest, the most cost-effective thing. Now there were some times he or his support system would send things on their own, and I would tell him, like, depending on what you're sending, let me know, because I may not actually need that. Or I could like tiles or something like that. Like, remember, I was resourceful, so I was looking at those programs. I'm like, you don't need to spend money buying our son bath towels when I literally can just go to this organization and get 3 bath towels. Like, it was like that. All right. So now we're getting into disclaimers. First, let me say this. This video's target audience is not for people who want to weaponize it towards single parents. I don't care what side of the family you're on, or if you're just a girlfriend of a man with a kid, or a boyfriend of a woman with a kid, or whatever. You should never want the other parent to have to make it work with the scraps they receive, knowing that the other parent can support more. That includes time or availability, financially, and shoot, maybe even emotionally. But of course, emotionally with boundaries. If you do want the parent who is the primary caretaker to struggle or to make it work, then I personally believe you cannot claim you care for that child. Single parents, majority of the time, make it happen already. So please do not weaponize this video. Last and final, I want you to know that support systems look different for everybody. And that plays a large part in what some women or men can do. You got daycare to worry about and have to find jobs that work around your child. Please have empathy for people you know who are trying. People who speak about people and situations they lack knowledge about or hear one-sided stories should not speak about it. So yes, that's my disclaimer. Again, I hope this video was able to help somebody. If you know somebody who's just trying to figure out how to stay afloat and they are in that situation where they are single mom, like doing it by themselves. And honestly, it probably could help anybody, because some of these are just ways to make extra income, but it's nothing that is that big. And that's why it's titled How I Stayed Afloat. But I think a big part of that is working towards their goals, whether it's long-term or short-term. Excuse me, if you want to start making t-shirts, you can make an extra couple bucks. You want to start selling bracelets, like that could be something. But of course, that's something you have to invest in. I'm never going to sit here and say something is easy, because that's subjective. What's easy for me is not easy for the next person. So I can't say that. But I think everything has some type of difficulty to somebody. And if it is easy for you, then that's great. Then do that. One of the things I did do was start a YouTube channel. I'm still not making income from that, but I have faith that one day I will.